I'd like to touch briefly on another false doctrine that is being spread about Facebook like wildfire now and across the internet, and that is the lunar Sabbath. The lunar Sabbath theory excuse me. Lunar Sabbath theory teaches that the weekly Shabbos are reset at each new moon, whether they use a conjunction or the returning crescent. It doesn't matter. The months are reset and begin back at day one every time we see a new moon. Now, according to this theory, the weekly Shabbat falls either on the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th days of each month, or on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of each month. And the 1st and 30th days in this latter system are not counted in the regular 7-day week. These are days that don't count in the weekly count. They're special days. They're called special Sabbaths, and this is made necessary because, as I stated earlier, the 7-day week does not fit into the lunar cycle. It doesn't fit into the solar cycle. So what they do is they say, because the moon is in an elliptical orbit around the earth, and because the earth is in an elliptical orbit around the sun, the month varies in length. Sometimes it's 29 days, and sometimes it's 30. Now, in a perfect world, it would be 1 month 29, 1 month 30, next month 29, next month 30, and on and on. But it's not this way. Sometimes it can have a couple of months in a row that are either 29 or 30 days, due to the elliptical nature of the orbits of the sun, or the earth, and the moon. As I said, I just want to touch on this briefly, but I want to show from the Ketuvim Natzrim that this lunar Sabbath is impossible. In John 7, let's read verse 2. I'm just going to read a couple verses through the chapter to get my point across. In Yochanan 7:2, and the festival of the Yehudim, or the Yehudim, was near the festival of booths, or that is Sukkot, the festival in the 7th month, which is a festival which begins on the 15th, ends on the 21st, and then the 22nd is a special a day of gathering. The first day is a Sabbath, and the last day is not a Sabbath. So here we see that the 21st is not a Sabbath, but the 22nd is. They say, voila, we have it right there. Well, let's read on. Verse 10. But when Yehoshua's brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly, but as it were in secret. In the interval verses, we've seen that Yehoshua has told his brothers, I'm not going up because the Jewish people, the rabbis and the scribes and the Pharisees want to put me to death, so I'm not going to go up. But then he later decides, after his brothers have gone up to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast, that he's going to go up, because if he hadn't, he would have broken the Torah and would have disqualified himself as the Mashiach. Now in verse 14, and about the middle of the festival, Yehoshua went up into the set-apart place, and he was teaching. Now, as he taught here in the temple, he heals a man. So he heals a man. He did that a lot. But the Pharisees are all up in arms because he's healed this man. And his reply is in verse 23, If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath so that the Torah of Moshe should not be broken, are you wroth or angry with me because I made a man entirely well on the Sabbath? Here he is, according to the lunar Sabbath doctrine. The 15th was the Sabbath, and the 22nd is the Sabbath. Okay, so here he is in the middle of this festival, and he's healed a man on the Sabbath. Impossible. Sukkot's only 7 days long, and then you have Shemini Atzeret, as it's called today, on the 22nd day, which is a Shabbat. How can 3.5 days, 3 or 4 days after the Sabbath be another Sabbath? It can't. It's impossible. Also, John chapter 19, 30 and 31 with Matthew 12, 40 shows us that Yehoshua was crucified on the day before the Shabbat, the 15th of Aviv. Yet he was raised 3 days later at the end of the 7th day week. Or the 7th day of the week, sorry. Again, this is impossible with the lunar Sabbath theory. You can't have Yehoshua dying on the day before the Shabbat and 3 days later being resurrected at the beginning or just before the first day of the week. Because the first day of the week follows the 7th day of the preceding week. The math just does not work. Interestingly enough, in these two border, I guess we could call them feast seasons, the Feast of Unleavens and the Feast of Sukkot, we have the death knell of the lunar theory again. How might you ask? Well, the Festival of Unleavens begins on the 15th, which is a Shabbat, and the festival ends on the 21st, which is a Shabbat. But we can have the Shabbos on the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th, according to one theory of the lunar Shabbat. But what do we do about Sukkot? We have the festival begins on the 15th, once again, a Shabbat. But the next Shabbat is the 22nd, 8 days later. It just doesn't add up. Another thing that shows the fallacy of the lunar Sabbath theory, and I say that a theory because I don't even think we could say that it's a theory because it's been proven to be wrong. But we'll just, for sake of language, we'll use the word theory for right now. The counting of the Omer is very troublesome for the lunar Sabbath adherents. They have to manipulate the text in the Torah by adding a second counting of days to make this feast work, or to make this doctrine work with the feast. Let's look. Leviticus 23, 15 through 6, or 15 and 16. And from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 complete Sabbaths. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahweh. Now, if we had only that passage, the lunar Shabbatarians, the lunar Sabbath keepers, could possibly have an argument, a valid argument. Because it's a little ambiguous there of whether this verse 16, until the morrow after the seventh Sabbath, is a separate counting, as they proclaim. But Yahweh, in His wisdom, has given us another witness that shows this is not the case. In Deuteronomy, Devarim 16, verses 9 and 10. Count 7 weeks for yourself. Begin to count 7 weeks from the time you begin to put the sickle to the grain, and you shall perform the festival of weeks to Yahweh your Elohim, according to the voluntary offering from your hand, which you give, as Yahweh your Elohim blesses you. No second counting allowed there. We count from the festival of first fruits, which is the first day of the week, during the week of unleavened, when they would bring the first sheaf that was harvested in the land of Israel, and they would bring it into the temple and offer it up. And from the day that they brought the offering, they count 7 full Sabbaths, and then the next day is Shavuot, or in Greek, Pentecost. I prefer Shavuot. It's the wheat harvest. So we see the trouble that the Scriptures give to the lunar Sabbath. It doesn't work according to Scripture. Now let us look at the year. Are there actually 2 New Years in the Torah? Many would argue no. The Torah is very plain that the first month of the year is in the month of the Aviv. Exodus 12, verse 1 and 2. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, This month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Case closed, right? Let's go to Deuteronomy 16:1. Guard the month of Aviv and perform the Passover to Yahweh your Elohim. For in the month of Aviv, Yahweh your Elohim brought you out of Mitzrayim by night. The first month is in the spring, in the month of the Aviv. But not so quick. The 7th month was the beginning of the Yovel years, the 50th year Jubilees. I had an individual that I corresponded with on this once or twice, and he said, well, you know, the passage I'm about to read is not what you think it says. Let us read Leviticus chapter 25, verses 8 through 11. And you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years, and the time of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be to you 49 years. You shall then sound a ram's horn to pass through on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, cause a ram's horn to pass through all your land. And you shall set the 50th year apart, and proclaim release throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It is a jubilee, or a yovel, for you. And each of you shall return to his possession, and each of you return to his clan. The 50th year is a jubilee to you. Do not sow nor reap what grows of its own, nor gather from its unpruned vine.